3-year term.
All right, we'll go ahead and call to order the September 13th, 2017 meeting of the Ascension Parish Zoning Commission. All commissioners are present. Can we get an introduction by staff?
Patrice Johnson, zoning secretary.
Cody Morton, the attorney for the zoning commission.
Lance Brock, zoning official.
Jerome Fournier, Director of Planning and Development.
All right, and item number 3 on the agenda is a motion to accept the minutes and the written decisions of the August 9th, 2017 meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion. Moved.
By Mr. Bishop, second. By Mr. Chasson.
Yeah.
Any discussion, any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Item number 4 is the chairman's comments. Chair has no comments tonight. Item number 5 is a public hearing to amend the Ascension Parish Development Code for the recommendation for the approval or denial to the Ascension Parish Council of A, zoning review ID PZ 1396.17, 11.43 acres for Lloyd George Acosta Jr. property, and Brenda Acosta, located on the north side of Louisiana Highway 1 South, approximately 575 feet east of Fontana Road, to request to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from medium intensity residential RM to mixed use MU. Is anyone here to move that forward? The applicants are not here? Oh, come forward. Yes, sir. You're Mr. Acosta?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell us what you're looking for, sir.
I want to have my property rezoned.
What purpose do you need that for, or do you want that for?
In the process of possibly trying to sell 3 acres of it.
All right. That's the back 3 acres that
Yes, sir.
you're trying to get rezoned?
Yes, sir.
The front part of your lot is already zoned as mixed use? Is that,
I think so.
Mr. Brock is
I think-
affirming that? All right. Staff, do you have any comments on that?
Mr. Chairman, we have a letter that's, we'd like to enter into the record from a law firm of Dugas. Ms. Maria Dugas is here, as I understand it. I will enter this into the record on behalf of a neighboring property
Okay.
owner.
Do we want to read that? I don't know what it says. Do you? Cody, what's the
You can
procedure?
ask Ms. Dugas if she wants to present it. If you want to present it into the record.
That's fine.
We should open a public hearing on that then, though. Cody?
Yeah, whenever y'all ready.
All right. We'll go ahead and open a public hearing. Ms. Patrice, has anyone signed up?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Barry St. Germain.
Good evening.
Yes, sir, Mr. St. Germain.
My name is Barry St. Germain. There's one tract of property between mine and the property that's being proposed to be rezoned. And I love Mr. George to death, and I can't believe I'm actually up there doing this, but the property in between us is zoned medium residential. And it is currently being used as a full-blown bus operation. I've been fighting this for 10 years. Some of y'all may have heard about it. And I know full well that the owner of that property is intending on buying this and making his operation even bigger. So as of right now, he's out of zoning compliance. And we've been allowing him to operate like this because the zoning department, the parish council, the parish president, and everyone I've spoken to, sent letters to, has basically ignored the problem for 10 years.
Was he operating, sir?
It's a bus. He leases the school buses to the parishes. It's a bus repair yard with probably 100 non-running buses in the back. As you were talking about with the gentleman earlier building the fence, they tried that. That didn't work. The fence still ain't built. 4 years. So how big do you want to let this situation get? That's my question. Do we nip it in the bud now? Well, I mean, that's obviously too late to do. But I can't, you're taking a beautiful rural area. I used to look at cow pastures. Now I look at school buses. And now you're talking about, he's saying that he wants to rezone for the back 3 acres, which is where the tower is. But then why are we applying for the whole 11.4 acres? That's all I have.
Good evening. I'm Barry's wife, Jean St. Germain, and I reside on the property adjacent to the current zoning violation, non-running buses. It's breaking current ordinances. The item's being viewed as an old item. It is not an old item. It is happening today. It really needs to be addressed. It's making a statement that the parish is going to allow anyone to do what they want to do and ignore it. All of these other people who are applying for zoning and going before the council, there's discussion about what restrictions are going to be placed, operating hours, fences, we're going to deny it. This wasn't even an opportunity brought forward to us to participate in the beginning, because the parish erroneously gave a permit for him to build a commercial building on the land. I brought it to the attention many, many, many times of the zoning board and planner, and only for them to say, okay, yes, we're aware of it, we're going to talk to him, we're going to get him to move it. Okay, oops, we let him build a building. Well, leave the building there, but don't let him operate his business there. He has recently, and I notified the zoning department of this, built up the land in the back, putting water onto my property. He started digging up the land to lay concrete across from my home. He kept the buses away from my home for a little while. Now this water is coming onto my land next to my home. Once upon a time, there was a building and 3 buses. Now there's like 300 buses. Exhaust fumes, noise. I see the buses through my kitchen window. It's disgusting. And when you talk to the zoning board, they're saying, excuse me, not the board, but some of the members who are here now, they acknowledge it. Yes, we made a mistake. Yes, it's wrong. Yes, it's a violation, but no action being taken. It's pure negligence, and we're not following our own laws and ordinances. It's a big problem. It's a safety problem. It's a visual problem. He operates 7 days a week. He doesn't need to be here. There's other places he can be. He's here because the city made him move off of the main highway. So now he's next to my home. It's not helping me, and we have subdivided land. It's very nice and peaceful where we are. It could turn into a very nice subdivision. I'm opposed to this item to rezone the Acosta's land because it's going to allow him, as we said, to continue this operation of something that's happening illegally already to start with, and it should not be condoned. So I'd like to ask for you to protect this rural area of the parish, which is where my home is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. St. Germain.
Good afternoon. Maria Duga, I do represent the St. Germains. We don't have any ongoing litigation at this time. We became aware of the issue of the rezoning involving the Acosta property today when it ran across it on an item that was being held on a zoning meeting tonight. So I sent a letter to Mr. Funes, which I'd like to offer, file, and introduce to all the members of the zoning commission at this time. The main crux of the issue is exactly what both of the homeowners said, who live on the other side of Mr. Scott Falcon's property. And even though Mr. Acosta did not directly say the intent of his rezoning is for specifically Scott Falcon to purchase it, that is exactly what's going on. This has been a continuing problem for 10 years that started with the same type of property of mixed use to the front, commercial use. The back is residential. Then he took his one little building and now has expanded into thousands of buses, hauled in dirt to where he's created a lake onto the St. Germain property to where they don't have lots that they can subdivide and sell unless they would like to sell out a pond, because that's what they have now. So basically what is happening here is they're trying to use the Acosta as surrogates basically to come before this council and get rezoning that will benefit directly Scott Falcon's efforts to expand and continue his ongoing violations of the parish ordinances and codes, and it needs to stop. The reason nothing has been done as of this time, as my understanding, is that even though the council had notice, for whatever reason, nothing was done. No action was taken. They supposedly, or because no action was taken, we can't take action now. However, there are still violations we are looking at directly against Falcon. The issue here tonight basically is the zoning of the Acosta property will directly impact and affect the ongoing and continuing violations that the St. Germains have to live with. And this committee has codes and has zoning in place for, as a public policy, so that the people in Ascension Parish, and including the St. Germains, can have a right to enjoy their property as intended to be used, not to change because it's a good profit. And that's basically what the underlying issue is here. So please note our objection to the record to any rezoning until we can resolve the matter with Mr. Falcon. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll close the public hearing on this. Is there somebody operating a out-of-code bus barn there? No, I'm looking at Google Earth right now. I want to know what the zoning for that property is, where the buses are.
The property's both. It's cross, I mean, it's mixed use and RM.
Where the buses are?
Yes, sir. It's both, but the bus is in the back of the property. It's also on your aerial. The back of the property is RM. The blue part is RM. The front part are the
So
approximately
where the buses
660
are
feet.
is RM.
Yes, sir.
And why is this guy allowed to operate, is he a pre-existing non-conforming use?
No,
No.
no. He's a prescriptive
Yeah,
use.
basically my understanding is this dates back a long time ago, and I know council has taken it up, parish attorney has taken it up, they hired special counsel to look into it, and I think what the result ended up being, I'm not sure if they formally took action or not, but I think what they were looking at as a prescription under state statutes, that if you don't enforce a violation within 5 years, the entire property then becomes a non-conforming use. So they're working through that right now, man. I don't know what the ultimate conclusion is, but that's kind of quick background on it.
So there's a 5-year prescriptive period. I'm assuming that's got to be in bad faith, or is that a good faith use of the land?
The statute did say.
Not to intervene, but yeah, that's exactly what my point is. It's basically in bad faith because all of his business things are listed to his home address. So you would never know on paper that he actually has an operation at that particular location unless you happen to be the St. Germains and look out your window and see thousands of buses or have the fumes running through your yard.
How long has he been there?
Huh?
13, 14 years, from what I understand.
10 years
Oh.
is roughly the timeline we've been looking at. And the problem is, but it's still ongoing. The second building was built within a certain period. Then he just hauled in dirt, which happened within months ago, that created the flooding issue. He does things basically now where he doesn't even come to get the permits. He just does them now. So,
Well, I can tell you from experience, and Mr. Brock, you may remember this, I've represented some clients who had a very similar issue, somebody using their property outside of the code, and I think it's appalling, quite frankly, that this is allowed to go on for whatever reason, especially if it's one thing if, well, I've been doing the same thing for a number of years, 5 years or whatever, 10 years, whatever the prescriptive period is, and hasn't changed anything, but if he's bringing in dirt and things of that nature, I mean, that needs to be stopped. And I don't know if we can do that. Obviously, we can't do it tonight. We'd have to have it in here, but that's very disconcerting, and I hope the council takes strong action against that. Mr. Fournier?
Yeah, I just wanted to add some interest. And I hope this pops up on the screen. John, can you get that up for us? If there's not enough reflective glare on the overhead. Yeah. Basically, where the zoom is. The front part of the property, as you can see right here, is the mixed-use portion of it. And the rear end is the residential portion. So I'll turn off the residential, and you can see in this photograph, these are all buses.
Yeah.
The property under question that's under consideration tonight is the neighboring property right here, all right? And so that's basically where we stand right now. Council, as Mr. Martin said, went into closed session, discussed this, and they decided not to take any action on it because it was prescribed.
Is that prescriptive issue, Cody, last only for the length of the non-conforming use? Is it like a pre-existing non-conforming use, or is it now forever
No, it just it basically what the statute says is it creates it. And I don't know what the final election of the council was. I'm just telling you what I knew, updating as they were going along. I know they hired special counsel to also look into this matter. But to answer your question, yeah, what the statute basically says is the parcel of property then becomes a non-conforming use.
Okay, but if it's a non-conforming use, right, then we have prohibition against expansion and other things that can happen. So if he's doing more work out there and he's bringing in dirt and he's doing some of these things, and then somebody from the building department ought to go over there and put a stop to it.
I agree, 100%.
Outside of the zoning, you're talking about the actual acts.
Right.
Right. I mean, you know.
And if he wants to do any more work, he should come before us to get approval for that.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, all right, so he's established his prescriptive use, but that just renders him a non-conforming. He still can't expand it. He still can't make any changes to it.
Yeah, I was at the council meeting whenever they brought this up about 2 months ago, and I'm also familiar with it from years ago. We gotta stop this at some point. It just keeps encroaching and encroaching and encroaching. With that being said, you don't have to convince me anymore. I'm going to recommend, make a motion to make a recommendation to the council to deny the zoning change.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Schexnayder, a second by Mr. Chasson. Any discussion?
I'd like for you to consider, this request is to rezone a substantial piece of land that's going to essentially put a finger out into residential property. And I think that is, it's not consistent with the surrounding land use. So I would hope that you would include that into your motion to give it some basis.
Well, I think the discussion.
I think our discussion is.
I don't have a I'm Brenda.
You may come up, man. Yeah, you're one of the applicants. You may come up. We're in the discussion phase. I'll allow you to be heard.
Yes, this is all new to us, and we live in the front off of Highway 2435 for the last, 35 years. We don't really have the same amount of problem that I guess John and them have as well. It just doesn't affect us in any way. So my thing is, we have intentions at some day in our life is retiring and moving somewhere else. So my son and my two other children, they wanted us to have it commercially rezoned, and an intention, whatever down the line what we need to do, as well as we live it. We're not selling the front, we're not selling the middle, and we have a communication tower, but that's on the very back. We're not selling the very back of the land, as Mr. St. Germain said. And then we have, I think, 2 acres. Now, some of this may be wrong because I'm not too familiar with it. 2 acres of land on the other side of the ditch that we even fool with. So our purpose was, and I felt in my heart, I know John, my husband worked for the family, very close. I thought I was doing a favor by selling my 3 acres of land to him to get some of that distraction away from her. And that's what I told her this morning. I said, John, I was just thinking I was doing the goodness of my heart, getting some of that away from you and just letting him use the 3 acres of land to get some of those buses off his side. So what I'm saying is it's never really affected our lives in any way, the way it's affected their lives. And I just hope that y'all wouldn't penalize us for rezoning our property for our wishes and for what we want to do maybe down the line and selling and whatever else, and so if y'all would just consider that.
I think part of the problem, I think there's concern about the bus issue. I'm concerned about that because if it does get rezoned into mixed use, then there's many uses. It doesn't necessarily, you don't have to sell it to the bus guy, but you can. And if he buys that, then he's got a non-conforming use, and then he's got your 3 acres that conform, and he can do whatever he wants on it. The bigger problem that I see is that everything around there is zoned residential, and basically there'll be a finger of, as Mr. Dumas said, a finger of mixed use in an area that's all residential. So unless we're going to do the whole area as mixed use, then we're really just taking one part, like an island, out of what should be residential, what is zoned residential, what the intent of the council is residential, and suggesting it should be something different, which brings up a bigger zoning problem because you want to keep everything kind of the way it is. You want to keep stuff by each other. So residences are by residents, mixed use, so you don't want industry moving into your neighborhood. You don't
Oh, I
want-
understand
You
that.
know, and and once we rezone it, well, we don't rezone it, we just make a recommendation, but if it gets rezoned, once it is, then anything that's legitimate in that mixed-use corridor can come in. And we've had a number of issues come before us in the past year on places like Highway 73, which is a very commercialized road, but there's still some residential areas where people are like, well, we want to rezone this into some more industry, mixed use or commercial crossroads. And we've always been hesitant to do that because like, well, no, this whole area right here is residential. So that's, I think, the bigger problem that I see on this.
Because the neighbors, which is next to them, estate of Lloyd George Acosta Sr., which is my brother-in-law, and they didn't have a problem with it. And next door to us is Laurie Elementary School. You know, so it's,
And that's pretty much more of a reason not to make it too commercialized.
Even
with
more
the school
so
right
not
next
you
door.
know,
But I think, just to illustrate, if you look at the map, see it's all blue,
yes,
except for the
though.
red here. So what you're proposing to do is have red go all the way up here and be surrounded by blue, 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 except for this one large piece of red going all the way through it. And that's what we're talking about, is why I think we're all hesitant or reluctant to do that, is because it's not going to be a nice section of red and blue. It's going to be this big island or finger just sticking up into the blue. You see what we're talking about?
But we're closed up by the school, if you notice, to where all the way, because the school goes all the way to the back of the property. So there's no way that, you know, that
Yeah,
blue
whoever-
must well go across that canal to another area on a railroad track. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not new to this. But we're closed in. There's no way we can go.
I think, and to be honest with you, I think the presence of a school makes it tougher to put more industry-friendly zoning requirements down on that land, because there's a school, an elementary school, which I think is an issue, so.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we have a motion and a second.
And
I think we've
Mr.
had the discussion you were looking for.
And Mr. Chairman, I can definitely modify my motion if that's okay, just to have more specificity that extending that would, encroach into possible spot zoning, and, keep the area, well, not necessarily spot zoning, but just to keep the area more contiguous with residential areas.
All right, so we've had the discussion. I think the motion is fine as it is, seconded. Any further discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion for recommendation of denial carries. And Mr. and Mrs. DeRicasa, I will say, we're not the final stop on the tour. We're not even the final authority. The parish council has to take that up, so, it's just a recommendation. They can do whatever they want with it. The council can. They are the authority on this.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Just had a thought. Do we need to approve the Roberts Rules of Order motion for this commission as well, since we're technically two separate commissions? One's the
Probably.
zoning, one's the,
I think it'd be safe too.
If you do, but you're gonna have to amend the agenda by unanimous vote to do it.
You're gonna
I'll
make a
make
make a
motion.
motion to
We have a
amend.
motion to
Second.
amend the agenda, second by Mr. Christie, to add the discussion on the Robert Rules of Order. Any discussion on that? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. So we will amend the agenda to add a issue regarding the use of Robert's Rules of Order to the same parameters that we discussed during the zoning meeting. Do I have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve Robert's Rules of Order with the exception that we.
With a special rule.
The special rule.
Thank you.
Yes,
All right,
I
so we
second
have-
that.
We have a motion by Mr. Chasson, second by Mr. Schexnayder. Any discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, number 6 is the staff report on Edenborn.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, a couple of months ago, before you was a rezone along St. Landry Road for residential property. When that issue came up, you had asked staff to look at the entire Edenborn area as it relates to St. Landry Road, to Edenborn, the new extension that's going across that's going to connect Edenborn, Highway 44 to St. Landry Road. Staff is in conversation with several property owners along that route and within that area, and we'd like to defer a formal presentation to the commission until we can complete that discussion with other property owners.
Approximately how long do you think that's gonna?
I'm hoping we can with you to you within maybe 30 to 60 days.
So by
Let's
November?
say November. Would that be okay? Yeah.
Okay. Sounds, rather do it right. Take your time, get it right before we do it. Okay, motion to adjourn?
So move. Motion.
Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.